How can I take ownership of myself and still be supportive to them?
Brannon, how's it going, man?
It's going good. How are you?
Doing great. Awesome weekend this weekend. Got to see Carson and Maddie. This is the last time they'll be at our house before they finally move to Denver to go to med school.
Wow.
So it was a good
Wow.
weekend. We got to spend some time with them. It was great.
Yeah. Is it like sad every time they leave?
Nor Normally it's not sad when they leave, but this time it is because I know that it's kind of like when med school hits, it's going to change, and we'll see them for a few days here and there on holidays and things, but we won't get any of the random weekend trips up, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. But you'll see them off and on, I'm sure. Holidays, things.
Yeah,
So,
yeah.
hey, side note, I figured out something that I may like better than eggs.
Oh no.
Do you want to take a guess?
Is it a food item?
Yeah.
Something that you would like is better than eggs? I have no clue. I could maybe think of like bacon or ham or something, but I don't know.
No, 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 not even close. Frozen burritos. Oh man, the last 30 seconds you lay like a,
Yeah,
a slice of
yeah.
cheddar on top,
The trick is they're
you know?
supposed to be instant, but by the time you doctor them up the right way, you have to cook them
Oh,
for like 22 minutes just to get the middle hot, but then it kind of crisps the outside. And then you have to throw cheese on top of it for the last 30
and
seconds.
then cottage cheese on top of that, and then
That's
diced tomatoes on top of that
that's
cottage cheese.
that's our
Oh
brother
my
Rex's
goodness.
specialty. That's
Yes.
Rex loves that. That's what we were raised on.
That's gourmet.
Yeah,
Yes.
those not bad, Brandon, not bad. I think you'd prefer
See
eggs
you
over burritos.
you like the frozen burrito though.
Oh yeah, it's
You're a
great when
fan.
it's doctored up that way.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. Um, okay, enough about my eating habits. This will be the last time we talk about that for a while.
I
So,
doubt that.
um, all right, let's dive in with our guest here. We got Steve here with us. Steve, welcome to the show.
Thanks, guys. Good to be here.
Um, if you could give us a little bit of background and tell us what's going on
Yeah.
with you, and we'll go from there.
Yeah. So I'm kind of, my question is centered around the relationship with my wife and how it affects our family. And so I'm going to give you kind of background on myself and then with her as well. And so for me, my wife and I have been married for about 20 years. I have struggled off and on with pornography throughout our marriage. And really, over the last 2 years, after kind of an explosive blow up of things coming out and her really finding out about deception, both around pornography, but also financially. And I can talk a little bit about that. I've done a lot of work therapeutically, but more importantly, in my case, and I think for a lot of guys, I've found community with some men who I've been able to be honest and vulnerable with, and really open up my heart and start to be seen. So that's been incredibly helpful. My wife and I have done some healing as well, not in a counseling environment, but really just having conversations between the two of us. She's been in therapy as well for some things I'll talk about in a minute. But in throughout the process of my own therapy, I've really uncovered deep codependence and deep sort of patterns of seeking her approval and seeking comfort outside of my relationship with God, and as well as in a healthy way that marriages should be. Um, I'll obviously be glad to answer any questions around that. But let me speak to the financial piece real quick. It wasn't any discussion around like paying for pornography or paying for sex or anything. It was really around just rampant irresponsibility. Is really real what it was. Um, with my wife, she grew up in a home that was highly abusive, and also experienced some abuse outside of that. And I forgot who it was that somebody said grief demands a witness, and she didn't really have the support and witnessing from her family that she needed with the abuse that occurred outside the home. And so she grew up with a high level of trauma. Actually, was diagnosed with CPTSD by a therapist, and has been working in therapy to address that up until the end of last year. Um, And so, really, alongside that, health wise, she's struggled with endometriosis for years. She's had multiple surgeries for it. And as of a few years ago, seems to be doing better with it. But most recently, really, what the issue is that I'm calling about um, is she has really been sort of detached from our family and um, in bed a lot, dealing with some pain, sort of related to pelvic issues and that sort of thing. And she's doing some physical therapy around it. But really, my concern is that she's um, allowing herself to be detached and allowing herself to really not be invested in our family. We have three kids. Um, so I'll say, 15, 12, and 9. And they are um, it's hard because I've heard that with alcoholism, for example, it's almost like kids, you grow up with a ghost, somebody who's there but not really there. And I
Hmm.
feel like that's a little bit of what's going on, or what it feels like in our home is she's there but not there. And so what I'm really struggling with is um, my initial question, I think, that I wrote down was, how do I love her best? And really around that, um, I want to be empathetic and supportive and caring, but also, um, you know, help her to be aware of what's going on around her, if you will.
Hmm.
And so I'm calling around, like, wanting to get help with that from you guys.
Steve, this detachment, is that like all the time, or is it like does it cycle or like?
Yeah, it's a good question. I mean, there is constantly sort of a level of hypervigilance, also dissociation. And so, and I will say this too. I think not chemical addiction by any means, but dependence for sure.
Hmm.
And instead of having healthy lifestyle patterns and choices, um, I mean, even getting out of bed or exercising or eating healthy, anything like that, and there's just a constant low level, medium level of unhealthy, like, coping and that sort of thing.
Okay.
Okay, what are the, I mean, not that these matter a ton, but the low level coping is the stuff that you feel like is keeping her stuck. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
Yeah, and I'll even say, I think there's a good bit of remaining unaddressed sadness and unaddressed, like, grief on her part.
Hmm.
Um, and while she has done an amazing amount of work in therapy, I think there's still a significant amount of things there that she either doesn't have the skills for or hasn't addressed yet.
And is that sadness around the betrayal or her past trauma or just all of it? Is that,
Yeah, I think it's sort of hard to pull apart, right?
yeah,
Because she, again, given the home that she grew up in, my betrayal exacerbated sort of what was already there.
right.
Um, and we both, going into marriage 20 years ago, were incredibly unhealthy people. Um, and I don't know that we just now are starting to get to a point where we even have a thought of what a healthy foundation for marriage is.
Hmm.
Um, and a lot of that's on me. I mean, I'm going to own that, right? For betrayal and just not making her the center of my affections. But I think for her, to answer your question, um, it really is both. It's the betrayal and it's her family.
How long ago was like the discovery of the betrayals, like the financial
Yeah.
betrayal or any betrayal? Like how long ago?
So the porn was 3 years ago, and the financial was really 2.5 years ago.
Wow.
And the of kind of lapse once since then with porn, but it was a one-off thing, right? It wasn't like a pattern of behavior.
Okay.
So I want to just make sure I'm understanding this right, Steve.
Sure.
Just kind of the picture that I'm having kind of form in my head is that you guys are in a long-term relationship where there were a lot of secrets that finally started coming out a few years ago to the point that it like really kind of blew things up. So relationally between
That's right.
you, that happened. Your wife has past trauma that's very significant that she's been working on in addition to
Yep.
the relational trauma. Plus she has medical issues that make it hard to be physically active, which has led to her staying kind of closed in, numbing out on whatever the
Yeah.
minor things are, social media, TV, something else.
Yeah. Yep.
And now you're wondering as a husband, how do you what's the line at which you step in and show empathy, understanding, acceptance of the reality of whatever her medical issues are,
Yeah.
and how much do you push, especially when you've been the one who's been part of the problem and you
Yeah.
don't know if you are allowed to have any kind of structure or push, and is that a way of loving her or not?
That's right. And I will say, from like a relational dynamic standpoint, the betrayal and all that like doesn't come up a whole lot anymore. And I don't think that's because of denial or trying to ignore it. I really think it's because there has been some healing in our marriage. And so um, that we have that sort of positive dynamic. But yeah, to answer your question, um, I don't I want to love her well, but I also don't want to shy away from hard conversations where it's needed and helpful, given that I'm the person with the greatest proximity to her in her life, right? Like, um, and that's another thing. Like, she doesn't have a whole lot of uh, in like vulnerable, in-depth friendships with other women and things like that. So, um, I guess I'm just really struggling with what does love look like, given in this situation.
So what you just said, like she's pretty isolated, you're
Yes.
saying? Okay.
Yeah. She has
Um,
some friends, but nothing, you know.
this is interesting because like without her being here, we're getting
Hmm.
a perspective of her through you.
Sure. Yeah.
But it is important to understand what's going on with her so we can answer your question about how to love her and support her.
Yeah.
And I'm still a little unclear. Let me ask a couple more
Yeah.
questions.
Please.
You say she was diagnosed with CPTSD.
Yes.
Does she still have symptoms, like a lot of symptoms of anxiety? Like,
Hmm.
is there panic attacks or just an avoidance of, going to out in public or, socializing or like what type of anxiety symptoms are there still that you see?
Yeah. Good question. So yes. So to answer your question, within the past year, and this was she's always struggled with sleep, like she's had bad insomnia, but and there's a whole backstory behind that. But anyway, I'll just say this: within the past year, she started having nightmares so bad that she only slept an hour or two a night, and it wasn't consecutive. It was um, really extreme. And she started seeing a really good psychiatrist who helped her regulate that and medically, but also sort of with nervous system interventions, if you will. Um, and it's gotten better. So, but it's also been pretty proximate in the sense of it hasn't been all that long ago that she dealt with that. Um, and so she is also dealing with some social isolation, um, in terms of not wanting to really get out a lot and really pushing back on, hey, let's go hang out with friends or get dinner or whatever, like little things.
Okay.
She's not really willing to do a whole lot.
Okay. But I do hear a willingness to seek help. Like she's seeing the psychiatrist. She's done therapy herself, right? She's
Yeah,
she's she's willing to try to figure things out.
that's right. And I will say this too, like there is some positive motion, and I should mention, she is in graduate school right now, and any energy that she spends a vast majority of it, I won't say all of it, but a lot of it goes towards graduate school. Outside
Awesome.
of that, she's in bed and not really engaging with her family and all that kind of stuff.
Okay.
I just want to check something else out too,
Sure.
Steve. Um, you're here showing up asking the right question as to like, how do I show up and how do I love
Yeah.
her? I imagine you've got your own process going on inside. Is there any level of frustration or resentment or exasperation that goes along with what you're asking right now?
There is certainly, I won't say resentment per se, exasperation, yeah, and then also a good bit of ruminating that I've had to really talk through with my therapist, and then also work on being present and work on um, because part of the rumination, just to be candid, is me taking the responsibility off myself to control things that I can control, right? And it's easy for me personally to ruminate and think through, well, if they would only just dot dot dot, then but there's a good bit of deflection there internally and not wanting to focus on what's my responsibility. And I've recognized that and trying to own that.
I think the question then is, and really maybe this is where we could turn this discussion to, is what then is your responsibility,
Hmm.
right?
Yeah.
Considering the situation, what can you be accountable for, what can you own, and
Yeah.
how can you get the best outcomes possible for you and for her and for your family,
Yeah.
right? Um, and so I think Tyler's question was a really good question because I'm picking up on that too, and I just want to validate that for a minute. Like I think that makes sense why you'd feel a little tired and whatever,
Sure.
and at the same time, I just side note here, your wife to me sounds like she's a fighter and that she's
Yes.
in many ways doing the best that she possibly can.
Yeah.
And so, and considering all the trauma she's been through, and then you add betrayal on top of that, and yet she's still going in and trying to get help. She's doing
Sure.
grad school,
Yeah.
um, and so it's hard because she's probably doing the best she possibly can. And at the
Mm.
same time, you're looking at this and saying you're in bed all day and you're isolated and like, this, how can I help you not be so shut down?
Yeah.
Um, so it's a tough situation for I think everybody. Um, and I do think there's some things you can take ownership for and maybe some perspectives to shift so that she's not feeling from you this constant like I want you to change,
Mm.
um, but something else from you that can help support her. So,
Yeah.
um, Tyler, anything you want to add to
Yeah,
what
no,
she's
I
saying?
think you're going where I would probably be going, Brannon. Is like I'm feeling this I'm feeling this energy, Steve. You can tell me if I'm wrong. There's like you're trying to ride the razor's edge of loving her well
Yeah.
while also not letting your exasperation and frustration bring the energy into the relationship that actually doesn't help things go right. And so it's just like two things that have to be happening. You're in this constant recirculation of, hey, I've got to continue to get my heart at peace, my heart
Hmm.
really honestly towards really wanting to help things go right and
Yep.
letting go of my own pride and everything else.
Yep.
And then I need to know, hey, maybe some of loving her is going to mean that there might actually be some kind of tension or hard moments in our relationship, but I need to make sure my heart's loving her when I do whatever I have to do.
Spot on. Yeah. That's exactly right. And to be honest with you, I like what you said about making sure that the energy that I don't bring into the room with her isn't exasperation and like frustration. And I certainly know that that's been there. And I struggle with like get frustrated with myself that I do that because I don't want to do that. Like I want to bring it to the room of I love you. There's hope here. We can do this. Like that sort of thing. And not frustration for where she is right now.
It's kind of a challenging thing because part of part of this process inside of a marriage is learning how to have a heart at peace and
Yeah.
approach something with love, even when you have to go and say, hey, there's sometimes where I have some really deep feelings of exasperation. Or
Mm,
man, I know that you're really struggling with your mental and physical health right now, and I can only imagine what that's like for you. And sometimes it's crushing for me too to try to figure out how to navigate this.
yeah.
And somehow be able to put your heart of love into that conversation so that you're still being honest, even though, you don't want her to then dip all the way deeper into like shame or pressure or anything else.
That's right. That's right. Yeah.
Another thing to do, like when you say I'm frustrated, like I don't want to be this way, I don't want to show up this way with her. The more you fight it and try to pretend like it's not there, the more it's going to be there. And so what
Yeah.
Tyler's saying is to go express it and own it to her. I think another thing to do is to own it within yourself and acknowledge it and validate it, and then find ways to cope with that and to deal with that. Maybe outside of your marriage, your relationship with her,
Sure.
you go cope with that in a healthy way, so you can show up in a place of resonating in actual love. If you just say, I don't want to be that, and I'm going to try really hard not to be that,
Right.
you're just going to set yourself up to continue to fuel that because
Yeah.
you're not actually walking through it.
That's good. Yeah, that's really good. And I think I want to name too, part of my posture is I had a therapist tell me that healthy anger is the willingness to be in pain for something that matters more than pain. Um, and that's sort of, uh, I've been highly comfort seeking for years. And so the willingness to be in pain, that in itself is hard for me. And so I bring that up to say, even Tyler, your recommendation of having that conversation with her is a challenge for me. And just
Yeah.
because I don't want to, deep inside, I want to seek comfort and not have a hard conversation. But I also fully understand that, to have a intimate marriage, you have to have those hard conversations sometimes. And so I guess I just wanted to name that.
I think it's awesome that you're naming it. And I'll just tell you from one recovering codependent to another, I get it, man. Like
Mhm.
Yeah.
I've spent a lot of years of my own marriage working on the very same things of having like certain things that I think could actually really help my wife or my kids or somebody else, and then being too afraid to have them be disappointed or cause conflict or not say something,
Sure.
and only then to then have to eat it myself. And then when you eat it, you either eat it internally and you feel more shame, more depression, more hopelessness, or it goes outwardly and that anger builds and it's not the good kind of anger at that point.
Yeah.
And like you said, maybe the different wording that I would use for like the right kind of anger is like I'm willing to take some heat for the sake of the greater good.
Mm,
And that's what
yeah.
that's what real recovery is inside of a relationship, is being able to go into that conversation and say, "Hey, I see you hurting really bad, and I see
Yeah.
that some of the coping seems to be maybe numbing and not helping,
Mm,
and I'm worried about you, and I definitely want you to feel better, but I also want you to see that the choices that you're still making to cope do have an impact on, the people around you, namely me and the kids, in these
sure.
ways." And that's hard. That's really hard for somebody who's already struggling, who's already depressed, who's already maybe fighting their own shame to have to hear that. But that's
Mm,
also a gift. Like you think about your own recovery process.
yeah.
Like you didn't really fully get into recovery until the disclosure started to happen, and then there was no place to run, and then you had to kind of look yourself in the mirror and go, oh
Yeah.
man, like I got the awful awareness of my current condition is part of what led to the motivation for you to want to get on the pathway to change.
Sure. Yeah. That's right. That's
But
right.
but you would best be on that pathway to change, and you've said it yourself here today, having grown into a team of people who love you and hold you accountable.
Hmm.
They do both. It's that whole thing Brandon was talking about of you're doing your best and you need to do better. Your kids are doing the best and they need to do better. Your wife is doing her best and she needs to do better. The truth
Yeah.
is all of us are in that spot and we need people around us who will give us both of that feedback.
Mm, that's really good, really helpful. Can I ask another quick question
Mhm.
related to this? Okay. Um, I something I really struggle with internally and am worried about is the impact on on our kids. And specifically, I want desperately want for us to have a healthy home, and so I try on that as much as I can. But how can I navigate that? I guess with my wife, and this is very much tied in. I think what we just talked about, but I guess talk through that for a minute. Like, how can I know that our kids are okay? That we're um, during this time with her and that sort of stuff.
If like there's so much to say, Steve, and I want to just kind of rewind back a little further because this will actually inform that question that you just asked.
Okay.
Um, but you know, it's tricky because if your frustration turns into judgment of her,
Hmm.
and then it also turns into like I want her to change so that I can ultimately have what I want.
That's right.
Um, there's this like, and this is such a buzzword, and I hate to use it, but it turns into a gaslight. It turns into like
Mm.
I'm trying to be loving, I'm trying to be kind, but I'm kind of like trying to constantly tell her that she needs to change
It's manipulative.
in all of these subtle ways.
Yeah.
And that's coming from an honest place of frustration for you.
Yeah.
Um, but when you do it in that kind of manipulative, subtle way,
Hmm.
the energy that she's constantly getting from you is like, I'm failing you, I'm not enough, I'm not okay. Which fuels her isolating from you, shutting down, and not wanting to connect. Um, and so I want to get back to your question about your kids because I want to give you an answer here about what you can do for yourself, and it will
Hmm.
absolutely help them too.
Okay.
And this is way easier said than done. But when you're in a situation like this, it's easy to focus on the pain and the frustration of it, right?
Yeah.
And you already know this. I'm going to tell you something you already know, but the way you can help her and the way you can help your kids is to be the healthiest version of you.
Yeah.
And what that means is that your focus is I'm going to be the the healthiest physically. I'm going to be the healthiest emotionally, spiritually that I
Hmm.
possibly can be. Because when
Hmm.
I'm resonating in a place of feeling alive and feeling acceptance and peace within myself,
Yeah.
that's going to radiate out to my children. She's going to sense that from me. And honestly, she might not like it, because part of her
Mm.
will be like, God, like now I can really see how I'm like, am I worthy of his love? Like am I
Mm.
gonna, but she'll also feel it from you. Like, hey,
Hmm.
Steve's showing up in this way.
Mm.
And you're doing that. It sounds like you're doing a lot of your own work, right?
Yeah. Yeah, I am. I'm certainly trying.
Yeah. But the best thing you can do for your kids is set an example of somebody who is healthy, and is loving her for where she's at. Okay. So that's just step number one. There's
Hmm.
more to this. Um, the other thing is to like you got to be careful that your frustrations don't bleed over to like venting to your children about her
Yeah.
or seeking validation from them, because they're in it with you, they're living in the house with you,
Yeah.
and so you got to be careful of that. At the same time, and this is tricky, at the same time um you don't want to like not be able to say what is to your children. Your
That's
children
right.
need to feel like you're honest with them
Yeah.
and that you're upfront and that they're smart and they feel it
Sure.
and they see it and they live there. So it's this balance of like I'm not seeking validation and using my children for my own frustration, but at the same time, I'll be honest with them and I'll hold empathy and I'll hold space and have empathy with them as they struggle with it as well in the house, right?
Yeah.
So it's loving toward them and it's not self-seeking for your own validation. Um,
Mm.
does do you see what I'm saying? It's a hard thing
No,
to do.
that's really good, and I have very intentionally n not been negative about her toward them, just because I don't want to. I know that it affects their dynamic with her, and I also, to your point, have tried to tell them the truth as it's appropriate.
Hmm.
Um, and it is a very hard thing to do, but no, that's great insight for sure.
One way to kind of stick to that line Brandon's talking about is that let's say your 15-year-old comes out of your bedroom after trying to talk to your wife and she's in a bad mode and she's not able to
Sure.
speak with them or give the right thing, and you can tell that there's like that weight and that heaviness.
Hmm.
You can step in and show empathy for the weight and the heaviness, and
Yeah.
you can even sit there and listen and hold it and maybe even provide some insight or some thoughts or some coaching as to like how to cope or how to next approach it or the next conversation to have without ever mentioning that
Mm,
she's this or this. You can stay
yeah.
focused on the emotional experience of your child and what healthy tools they would have to interact with someone who's in that state of depression,
Mm,
right? Without
yeah.
having to make it personal or be like, yeah, your mom's like totally checked out or she's a bum or whatever.
Sure.
You would never
Sure.
say that anyway, but
Right. Right. Right.
um, I like where Brandon's going with that. Another thought that I'd add, and then Brandon, I mean, unless you had more, Brandon, to what you were saying.
No, no, no. Go ahead. I do have another point, but go ahead.
Okay. Okay. Just to throw into the mix of what Brandon's giving is this is something that's been helpful to me in my own journey with some kind of depression in my life. Having people there that kind of understand the process and then are there to continually provide the path, like
Mm,
laying the path out in terms of, and the way what I mean by this is being as generous as possible in your assumptions about what she really wants with her life.
mm,
So
mm.
you know that she wants to be a good mom. She wants to be an engaged spouse.
Yeah.
She wants so if you made that assumption first, which I know making assumptions is not typically what something we approve of, but if you made the most generous assumption, then you'd step into conversations with opening the possibilities that these things could be that way, and then
Yeah.
starting to connect the dots between what are the
Mm,
inputs and why aren't we getting the outcomes? Well, what would be the new inputs then? Because there is a pathway to get there. And then just opening that up so it's constantly like, hey, like, you could have everything you're wanting, and I believe you want this, and this.
yeah.
And your inputs would need to shift to a few of these things, and you'd be on the path for it, right?
I like that. Yeah, that I think that posture takes the weight off of her and allows her to have eyes for possibility. I like that.
I think when it comes to like mental health, it's a lot like we naturally judge that more than other things. So, like for example, let's say my wife had her leg amputated,
Mm-hmm.
and so then it's like, well, hey, I want to go hiking, but she won't go hiking with me. If I were on here, Steve, and you were the host, and I was frustrated because my wife, who had her leg amputated, won't go hiking with me. What would you say to me?
I would say you need to, consider the reality of what's going on and that she doesn't have a leg. Yeah,
I mean, it's pretty obvious, right?
right.
But when we're talking about mental health, and we're talking about complex trauma that she's
Yeah,
been through,
yeah.
um, we look at this and we're like, come on, get your butt out of bed. Come on,
Hmm.
show up this way or that way. Like maybe she is functioning like 100 times more than somebody would who's been through the trauma that she's been through.
Yeah.
Maybe she's like killing it. Like it-
Sure.
you know,
Yeah.
like let's take my wife with an amputated leg. Maybe she's strapping on something and walking around the neighborhood as
Right.
much as she possibly can, but she can't climb the mountain with me.
Yeah.
So can I sit back and say, you know what? Like good for her. And
Mm.
and can I stop for a minute and like really believe that she's doing the best that she can? And I know that invalidates your frustration. It would be frustrating that I couldn't hike with my wife,
That's right.
right? But if that's the reality of
Yeah.
it, it doesn't
Yeah.
do me any good to fight and resist that reality. It just causes
Yeah.
me suffering.
Brannon,
Mm.
I think the struggle with what you're saying is that, yeah, everything you're saying I agree with, but the struggle with what you're saying is that so often part of the solution for poor mental health is those things. It's like it's not that I'm wanting her to go hiking with me. It's like if she wants to get better, she needs to go hiking with me.
Mm.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
It's kind of like its own intervention and not just the desire of the partner. And
But
it's hard to
Tyler, I
find it's hard to
agree.
find reality sometimes
You
inside of
make a
like what
really
is
good
reality.
you make a really good point, but it's like you can't jump off the deep end.
Mm.
So you're absolutely right. Like
Mm.
isolating is not a good answer to poor mental health,
Yeah.
right? But getting yourself out to school or interacting some with people, that might take a lot. And so like good she
Mm.
doesn't need to go make like, 20 friends tomorrow. Um so um I had one more thing I wanted to say, if you don't mind. I know I'm talking a lot, but Tyler, did you see that we got a negative review?
Oh, we did. I haven't
Yeah.
seen it yet.
Yeah, it was pretty negative. Yeah, but it was interesting because I think here with Steve today, it was a review about, we were talking to Buzz, and basically the review said like, I've been fans of these guys for a while, but they basically are blaming this woman who's been through betrayal. And of course, she doesn't want to be close to him. Of course, like, how dare
Mm.
they blame her? And it was interesting talking to Buzz and talking to you, Steve. Here's the tricky part. As we talk about her and her symptoms and everything she's
Yeah.
been through, um, it's important to acknowledge that she's been betrayed and she's been hurt, right?
Yeah. Mhm.
And at the same time, you having some boundaries and even
Mm.
having some friction with her around this stuff
Yeah.
is actually exhibiting interdependency and healthy attachment with her.
Mm.
And so we need to both hold, it's not cool that she's been betrayed and it's not
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
And also a healthy man with good, healthy masculinity and a healthy human being with good, healthy boundaries will actually say something and not just swallow everything. Well,
Mm.
in a loving way, in a loving, kind, non-blamey way, will actually voice up and say, "This is where I'm at. This is how I'm feeling. These are some of my
Mm.
frustrations."
Yeah.
Right? And so, even though you betrayed her, it doesn't mean that you shouldn't actually be honest with her about some of these feelings that you're having,
Mhm.
right?
That's really good. And I want to kind of tie a bow on this real quick for me. Like, really, what I keep hearing reverberated is two things: is a willingness to show up in hard moments and be honest and connect in that way. But also, I really have liked what you've had to say about um, naming and really paying attention to the places where she's already showing up.
Yeah.
And I can, as we've talked through it, I can see those moments where, to your point, she's not jumping in the proverbial deep end, but she's certainly making the motion and the effort in certain areas to move forward. And while it may not look like what I want it to look like right now, it is movement and it is positive motion. And I think that's to be championed and encouraged and that sort of stuff.
Steve, how does this feel? Like if I were to say, you have a wife who's a badass who's fighting like hell.
Yeah.
How does that feel?
Uh, it makes me feel good to be with her, for one.
There you go.
And for two, it's everything. It's everything I know to be true about her. That's spot on.
And it's okay, Steve, for you to be a badass who's fighting like hell too.
Mm.
And if you really, really love somebody and you see them floundering, sometimes you have to step into it a little bit to and provide some structure and support there. You know, I know like when I was in high school, I had some friends come over to my house frequently when I was really depressed. I'd lay on the couch and listen to Everybody Hurts by REM on repeat
Mm,
and just want to die. And there were days when my buddies would show up and they would literally drag me off of the couch and take me into the mountains and do a campfire or drag me over to their house and hang out with them or whatever they were doing. And even though I was still miserable through some of those things,
yeah,
it meant something that they were willing to step into that fray a little bit and at least do the best they knew how to try to help a friend who was struggling. And and if you're not stepping in because of your own fear, that's not the reason not to step in.
yeah.
Um, so
And that's true. And if I could just share one quick thing, I think it would help other people. There's a line in a Fall Out Boy song that says, "I'm coming for you and I'm making war." Um,
Mhm.
and that's something she's literally looked at me before and said, "That's exactly what I want from you,
Mhm.
is that posture." And yes, badassery. I think that's the part of the cure.
I'm coming for you and I'm making war.
Yeah,
That's what it was. Man, considering the context here of what we've talked about today, that does sum it up perfectly. And she's telling you, Steve, she's telling you that's the man I want. I
yeah,
want a man who's going to fight for me and step into the hard, but come for her as well. And yeah, that Steve, talking to you has been great. Like you really understand these concepts well. Um, I do think you're genuine and really wanting to figure out how to create love in your marriage
yeah,
and with your kids as well. But like it's hard. It's a process. It's one day at a time. There's going to be times when the frustration gets so much you're thinking like, God, am I doing anything right here? And then
yeah,
there's going to be times when you're really patient, you're really empathetic, you're really honest. So be patient with yourself, have some grace for
mm,
yourself, take good care of
hmm,
yourself,
yeah,
um, and just keep moving forward.
yeah. Guys, this has been great. I really appreciate it.
thanks for coming on, man. We appreciate having you here. We wish you the very best of luck. We'd love to hear how things are shaking out for you sometime in the future as well.
Yeah,
And yeah, thank you, man. Thanks for coming on.
sounds great. Have a good one.
You too. Thanks to everybody who's here with us, who's listening. We love your feedback, even when it's negative. So we'd love to hear from you guys in any way. If you throw a shout out to any of our callers too, you can do that through the review process. And until next time, keep on keeping on.